Welcome back. For this next video, I'm going to show you how to draw a bed in one-point perspective in your room, and I'm going to show you two different ways of drawing a bed. The first way is going to be with the headboard against the wall and the footboard coming toward us, and the second way is going to be the side view of a bed. Remember that when we draw furniture in perspective, we're breaking down into simple shapes first, and then we can add on and add style and to the contours, and we can morph the contours once we have the perspective structure drawn. So I'm going to start out giving this bed a headboard, and it's going to be against this back wall. But just because it's against the back wall doesn't mean it's flat as a piece of paper. So it's going to need to have a little bit of depth in and of itself. And so I want to think about how far out I want that bed to come, that headboard to come in the room. Like, what would the thickness of that headboard be? Remember that these lines divide the floor from the wall, and then again the floor from the wall is this line. So I want to think about that, because if I draw up here, or if I draw over here, I'm going to end up drawing up onto the wall, and I don't want to do that. These are the corners of the room at the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with the thickness of my headboard. I'm going to draw kind of where I want, like, the overall thickness of this headboard and where I want it to be. And then I'm going to draw straight up from there. So I started out with a horizontal on the floor, just kind of marking, like, where would that be? Where would I draw, or where would I place? Draw a little darker so you can see the base of that headboard, like how thick would it be against the wall. And so it would also come against the corner. I am drawing the bed against the corner of the room. You know, however high you want to draw your headboard, that's entirely up to you. So I'm going to make mine about this tall, because I'm leaving room for, like, the height of the mattress as well. This line ended up being at a bit of an angle, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that up. Remember, you want them to be parallels. Your verticals should all be at the same angle. And then I'm going to cut that off, like right about here, probably a little below the horizon line. Otherwise, I'll end up creating like an awkward area for not being able to see the depth. So now that I have a general frame, and I'm going to go ahead and erase what's behind that as well, which is the corner of the room and the floor, I can now add the depth for the headboard. So that's going to be pretty skinny. So I'm just going to create tiny little marks here, using my vanishing point, my little orthogonal lines, tiny little marks, and it's going to be a bit of an awkward angle. So I mean, it's going to be super slight, really. And I'll connect the two. Let me make sure I have that added in there correctly. There we go. Very slight angle, because it's so close to the vanishing point and the horizon line, we can't really see much depth there. Now I need to use my orthogonal line again to find the angle for the base of that headboard. My ruler got off just a bit. You guys are seeing me make lots of little mistakes. A lot of it has to do as well with the pencil tip and the thickness of that. So I'm going to redraw that, and then I'm going to connect those two with a vertical. So that gives me a little bit of depth, just the slightest bit of depth for my headboard, but it kind of sets me up well to now add the mattress on. So my headboard's back here in the back. Again, just very simple, basic structure for a headboard. And then I'm going to come down here for my footboard. Again, when I draw where my footboard is going to exist, I want to think about the overall length of the bed. I mean, if I make it this long, then it's going to look really long and exaggerated and fill up the whole room. So instead, I'm going to put my footboard right about here. And I'm going to start out with my horizontal line, again, not going up onto the wall. So you see here, and this might end up being shorter in the end, but what I'm drawing right now is the bottom line for the rectangle that's going to be my footboard. If I was looking at the end of a bed, I would see more of a rectangular shape. And so then I'm going to use my vertical lines to create how high the footboard would be. Remember, it's closer to us, so that means it's going to be drawn a little bit bigger. Like, it's going to appear bigger to give that illusion of depth. And then I'm going to use my horizontal line again to draw the rectangle that will become my footboard. Now, one more thing I want to point out, notice where my footboard ends, like the overall width of my footboard ends right at the corner of the room. I did not draw, if I extend that line, I would end up drawing it like up on the wall. So instead I want to make sure it's resting on the floor. I'm going to erase what I don't need, which of course is the back wall. And then I'm going to use my orthogonal lines to attach to the corners of the mattress. Now the mattress will end up running into my headboard, so I'm going to stop it at my headboard. So I only need to draw that line right there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with where it would end on the headboard, both here and then in the bottom right corner of my mattress. Hopefully you can still see that. I keep moving my paper around. Sorry about that. And where it would run into the headboard again, I'm going to stop it. Here we go. And then I am going to create a parallel line for my baseboard or the footboard. So that's a horizontal line again that I'm going to use to cut off where the mattress intersects with the headboard. And then I'm going to use a vertical line to cut off where the mattress intersects with the headboard. I'm going to erase everything I can see. You can kind of see the frame. And again, we start out with a very basic shape structure, and then we can add on to it and morph it. Maybe I don't like how the headboard came so far out from the wall, or maybe I'm okay with that. I can also extend my footboard to give the same illusion. So let's say that I want to add on to that footboard and make it extend past the mattress as well, so that it kind of has a similar effect going on. I can definitely do that just by adding, extending the lines that I've already created. And this is how I can kind of morph the overall structure to give it some more style that I am wanting to add into my furniture pieces. There we go. Just kind of freehand those lines to finish them off and make sure that they are put back together. And then of course I would need to create, if there's any thickness that I can identify, like there'd be a little bit of an angle there. And then using that vanishing point, again, a little bit of an angle there to show the thickness of the footboard as well. And I would use a vertical line just to kind of finish it off. It's really slight and subtle, but it does make a difference, and it does help to make your object look 3D. Otherwise, like I said, it's going to end up looking like it's paper thin, and that's kind of an awkward look overall. I do feel like my mattress came up a little high on this baseline, so I'm just going to redraw that orthogonal line. Just to keep it, notice, being very picky with perspective becomes really, really important. There we go. So just clean that up just a little bit so that it appears more like I want it to appear. At the same time, I'm kind of noticing that, like, okay, maybe I want my side of my bed to come in a little bit more to make, the edge of that footboard appear on this side as though it sticks out a bit more. So I'm just going back in and morphing and adjusting to give the style that I want it to have. I mean, again, we started out with a very basic structure, and now I'm just kind of adding on to that. Again, I want the thickness of that footboard here, so that then I can take that across here with a horizontal line. I can erase everything else out that's inside of it to give me a bed with a footboard and a headboard. Does your bed need to have a footboard and headboard? No, it does not. If it is, I mean, there are beds today that just kind of sit on the ground on a frame. That is all fine as well. I don't need to draw any thickness on this side because of my perspective. I wouldn't see that plane that's on the left side of the bed. Here's where I start to morph the bed though. Like, I adjust the contours, maybe I make things more round. I add in a comforter. I can do that along the bottom of the bed and change the shape of like the mattress so the bed actually looks comfortable and not like it's made out of like stone. I can round this line. Now that I have that structure, I can use it as a guideline to kind of round the edge and soften the edge of the bed. I can add pillows in on the bed. So I'm just kind of drawing pillows somewhat flat because they're against the back wall. Maybe I'd make them a little bit more even than I made them here to begin with. So I have all my pillows. There we go. I'm erasing that back line to make the bed appear more comfortable. I'm going to round that edge as well. And all of a sudden, I have morphed it. Maybe I would even add like legs onto the bed if I want to do that. Don't forget to add smaller ones in the background for that one leg. And all of this starts to kind of come together to make my bed look a little more appealing, a little more comfortable than it did to begin with. So now I have drawn, let's see, we'll give a little side edges to those pillows here, little corners to them. Now I have drawn a bed coming toward me in 1 point perspective. The next step is to draw a bed from a side view. Okay, so a side view of a bed. In order to do the side view in some ways is maybe a little more simple. I'm not going to morph the contours for this one. I'm just going to give you that basic shape. So again, you want to figure how far out into the room does your bed come, and be sure to watch where the floor and the wall come together, because you don't want to draw it past that. So let's say that I want my bed to fill up like a big section of the room. I'm looking at it from the side. It's still going to be a rectangle, right? So I'm going to go ahead and draw that rectangle from the side. Like this. Then I'm going to add on to that rectangle. So here I'm just using my horizontal and my vertical lines. I'm going to erase out where I can see the wall. Again, I'm making my bed go flush against the wall. Yours certainly would not need to do that. So just kind of keep that in mind. Then I'm going to use my orthogonal lines to figure out where, and I want to think about how high up is it going to come on that wall. Like probably about here, maybe even a little bit lower. Just kind of have, again, I'm just kind of like getting my plan in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw here and here to get the side angles for the bed. And then I'm going to cut it off for the height, like where as tall as I feel like it should be. That's where I'm going to chop it off with a horizontal line. And that doesn't look right. Why doesn't it look right? It doesn't look right because I'm not using that corner where it meets the corner of the room. So here's where I erase, because I'm like, well, my plan didn't quite work out because it doesn't work with the rules of perspective and the structure of the room. So I'm going to have to come back here. I'm going to have to use my ruler, place my ruler in that corner of the room, and then find the horizontal angle, like the same parallel horizontal angle, to finish off the end of my bed. So now it looks much better, much more in perspective. I'm going to go ahead and erase the things I don't need again. For example, I need to erase all of the structure underneath, like the room structure underneath the bed. And you might be thinking, well, that angle feels really awkward over here on the side. If it feels awkward, it's because it's to the right of the vanishing point. We didn't really do anything like that in the last drawing of the bed, like the one that I just did. So that may be why it feels a little off, but as long as you're using that orthogonal line, you know, you can just check yourself. Is that correct? Yep, it's correct. If you wanted to add a headboard onto this, it's fairly simple to do so. You're just working with your horizontal or vertical lines, and then again using your orthogonals to determine how tall that headboard would be. Now keep in mind there's going to be some thickness for this headboard. And so you'll want to think through that, like it's not completely flat like paper thin against the wall. And so you may have to actually alter the structure of your mattress, because in this instance, like in order to create that thickness, you would need to use your horizontal lines coming forward to add on to the headboard. I'm doing that at the corner of the room again. So my horizontal lines coming forward, I would use my orthogonals to go to determine the depth of, or the thickness of the headboard. And then I would use vertical lines then to create that thickness. And in that case, then I would erase my mattress where it overlaps. Again, I'm going to use vertical lines to establish the thickness of that headboard, erase anything I don't need. You know, I don't like you can see how it kind of comes into the headboard here and it like overlaps the corner. So that wouldn't be accurate. So I would need to go back and redraw that vertical. Again, this is where you just kind of keep yourself in check as you are drawing in perspective. I also need to replicate that horizontal angle in the back for my headboard. See if that looks a little bit more accurate. That looks more accurate in space as far as how it's drawn. So keep yourself in check. Go back, make corrections. If it doesn't look right, you know, you got to fix it. Like you got to figure out what it is. Here I have to mirror my angle for the footboard of, or I'm sorry, not for the footboard, for the base of the headboard. So I'm going to come down here with a horizontal, and then I'm just going to extend that vertical line. Erase out what I don't need. I need to create a little bit of depth right here because this could connect back to the vanishing point. So there I created that depth. Got my mattress off right here, and it's drawn in perspective. Of course, I would probably want to add, this looks like this angle got a little off, not completely, no, actually it's right. So I could add in my little like foot down here, just extend this line, extend this line. Redo that. It's just really going to be a flat facing shape, and then it's going to, the angle or the depth of it is going to recede back. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was trying to do in the first place. There we go. So you see, it's a little bit of playing around and checking yourself and going, that doesn't look quite right. What is that angle actually supposed to be? What would I actually be seeing? And in fact, I would go back and just even up those legs, like make sure that that angle is correct. You can just place your ruler along that base of that headboard just to like clean up those lines. And then I'm going to clean that up too. My pencil is really not sharp anymore, so I'm having a hard time with like the really small accurate spaces because this mechanical pencil is not the most refined of all my pencils here. There we go. All right, so here's where you would start to morph your contours. If you wanted to add other things, you could add a dresser on the side. The dresser would be handled in a very similar fashion. I would figure out where I want that base. Remember, you're looking at the dresser from the side, so it would start out as a rectangle. I would think about the overall height. I'm using just verticals and horizontals to create the dresser. I'm drawing the side view. I need another horizontal line to mimic that side view. Moving kind of quickly now because these things should be somewhat review for you. I'm going to use orthogonal lines anywhere that they can attach. So this one, it would pass through, it would intersect. So I don't draw the top plane. Instead, I would draw this and this orthogonal, and I would connect this corner. The other corners would end up passing through the shape, and so then I don't connect them to the vanishing point as a result of that. I need to figure out where I want to cut off my dresser. I can make it more wide, I can make it more tall and thin. I'll choose the tall and thin version to cut off my, or chop off where I want the furniture to end. I'm going to erase my vanishing point lines. Notice I'm erasing every time I draw something, I'm erasing out those vanishing point lines because otherwise they become confusing. You can see I have my very basic shape of my dresser. To add on to the dresser, I might add some drawers, and so I would connect those drawers, or I would draw those drawers based on using the vanishing point to establish where those drawers would exist. If you created any sort of thickness to the drawers, then you would need to make sure that this plane that's out here, like closest to us, that we can see the side view of the drawer. If you chose to make it, you know, have a certain like thickness overall to the drawers, but if they sink back in, then you wouldn't need to worry about that. I'm also, for the handles, I'm going to choose like handles that you can grab, and so I'm going to use my vanishing point to keep those handles at more of a precise angle as well. Now I can go back in and freehand, but now I know where they would exist based on that vanishing point and what angle they would be at, as opposed, so like now I can go back in and I can make them like fancy handles if I want to do that. Some sort of like fancy ornamental if I want to add like any sort of details or ornamental accents on. And now I have, again, my dresser within my space, and I also have a bed. I could draw a side table over here if I wanted to. I could draw a table in the corner. I could draw a chair in the corner. I could add a desk over here on the side. So last thing, if you want to add any sort of lighting that is not can lighting, you can do that by using your ellipses. So you'll start out with an ellipse, and then maybe it's like a dome light and it comes forward and hangs down into the room. You would simply erase, sorry, I'm kind of erasing everything. You would erase the bottom part of that ellipse that you used to draw the dome light, and that would make that dome light hang down into the room. Some people would rather a different form of lighting, so just make sure, you know, the curve exists on the top, or if it's like a light that has kind of a like a drop down feature, usually it's going to start out with an ellipse of some type, and then it's going to drop from the ellipse, you know, like even if it's like a light bulb or something that you have hanging, like maybe you kind of like that look, I don't know, like sometimes people like the hanging light bulb look. you can do that, but you just need to make sure that you start out with that base, that like ellipse base, or like more of a cylinder style of drawing for your base on the ceiling so that it looks realistic in how you draw it. So good luck, you guys. This is my last video for 1 point perspective. Hopefully you've been able to get some good tips here. You've seen me make corrections and have to go back in and change my work. This is part of drawing in perspective, making sure you stick to the rules, noticing where things look off or not right, and then putting yourself in check. So hopefully you're doing okay. Please let me know if you're not. I haven't received a lot of communication that way. And I look forward to seeing your drawings. Hope you're doing well. Talk to you later. Bye.